Let's talk about strategic in your everyday life. So, I would imagine that you are someone who is pretty much always prepared for whatever environment, whatever scenario you're walking into. No matter what you're doing, by the time you show up, you've already thought through all the potential scenarios that you could encounter and you know how you'll handle each one of them and you come prepared to do so. Now, it's true. Some people might label this as anxiety, and in some cases, maybe it is. But the practice of thinking through potentials, choosing the best option, and really going with that is not only comforting to you, it's energizing. So it's not just you protecting yourself from potentially bad outcomes. It's you actually building up your energy by being like, okay, this is what we're doing today. Like, what are all the things that we could do? What should I prepare for that? What do I need to look into? What information do I need? Like, while laughingly I say some people might identify that as anxiety, it's not for you. It's energizing. It's what makes you feel good. It's what makes you feel connected to yourself and to whatever it is that you're doing. So do that. I mean, don't go crazy with it, but do it, use that strength so that you feel prepared to show up in environments that you're showing up in. Now, as someone with high strategic, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is learn to trust your instincts. Especially if you are a female, this is something that is kind of beaten out of us a little bit, but we have very strong intuition and instincts. And there is nothing better for you than to learn to trust those instincts and then utilize those in your strategic thinking. Part of this trusting your instincts is also because the way that strategic can show up is that you naturally process and consider options at a much faster pace than anyone around you. So because you do it at such a fast pace, you may not always realize exactly how you landed on a strategy or an idea that you're about to pursue. So like all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, this is it. And you're like, how did I get here? Like, how do I know this is going to work? The world around you may really want proof or a why behind the strategy that you have come up with. But in a lot of scenarios, especially in everyday life for you, you can trust that what you've landed on will work because it often does. And you probably didn't get to that decision just on a whim. You did a lot of processing behind the scenes. And so that's just as important for other people to know and respect about you as it is for you to know and respect about yourself. Now, as I've mentioned in different videos, there are some strengths that when I'm working with clients, we have to actively figure out how to lean into those strengths and how to maximize them. There are other strengths where they're just so inherent and so natural that sometimes it's more about setting the boundaries. With strategic, it's a little bit of both, but I would say this is a strength that is so inherent that you don't need to like force yourself to do it. But it's also a strength that you can specifically choose to lean into when you need energy. So use that. If you find it fun and exciting to plan things or problem solve through building out strategies, allow yourself to have time to do that. Allow yourself to think strategically and then actually do it. An example I will give of my own personal life is that my husband and I like to bring up some really, big problem in the world, like big governmental issue, whatever it is. And then we just like spend a lot of time talking about how we would fix that. And it's like, well, we could go this direction and we could do this. Or, well, did we consider this? What about this thing? What about this piece of the puzzle? Right. And for me, that's super energizing. It also helps me hone my arguments and help hone my thoughts on different things. But more than anything, it's just fun for me to think through like how I would solve that problem and all the different strategies I could use to do it. So you can do something as simple as that. I was like having conversations with people where you're feeling a little down, you're feeling a little stressed out. That can be even talking about what you're stressed out about and figuring out all the options could potentially be energizing and grounding for you. Now, when it comes to the whole processing things fast and trusting your gut, something to note is that kind of depending on what your other strengths are, and even though you do likely process things fast and get to kind of this strategic direction quickly, to some other people, it can actually feel slow because they're the people who don't want to process or think about like alternative paths or anything. They just want to do. They like got the idea and they want to go. I'm thinking of activator here, which I also have high. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, why do we need to think through all of these things? Why do we need to think through all the scenarios? Let's just do it. Let's just do it and see what happens. So there are going to be those kinds of people, and figuring out how to like come together and make each other better by let's think about some of the strategies so we don't make mistakes. And also let's not think forever and let's go. That's kind of a place where you may butt heads with people, but also could be a really healthy relationship, a really healthy partnership on working on a project or something like that. There are also going to be times where people in your life, your family, friends, etc., want to do something in a certain way, and you don't think that that's the best. Actually, you know that's not the best way to do it. If you read the room and the people around you are not interested in changing the way they do things, this is probably one of those scenarios where you're going to have to let your strategic take a back seat or be willing to fight the fight for it. Some people just won't ever want to change their ways. No matter how much evidence you present to them about how doing it a different way is going to be better, easier, more efficient, etc., they just don't care. They want to do it the way they know how to do it. This is an area in life and relationships where you're really going to want to choose carefully when you really lean into your strategic and not. It is very frustrating when people don't want to make things easier and more efficient, but it's also a fact of life. So learn how to deal with that. Learn how to communicate about your strength to see if people actually do want to improve and be more efficient and all of those things. And also learn that if they say no, it's like, all right, you're going to do things the way you're going to do things. That's fine. And this goes for a lot of different strengths when it comes to being a part of a community and a part of a world, but it can still be frustrating, and that's okay. Now, a couple of blind spots to look out for in life. It also obviously pertains to work, but we're going to focus on it from a life standpoint here, is that to some people, your constant question of what if this happens can really come off as pessimistic, or it can feel like you are criticizing the plan that they have already laid out because you're questioning it, right? And I bring this up in the life section because especially in life and relationships where you may not have the same authority that you do at work, likely you don't, you'll really need to tailor your approach and explain your thoughts to people and know when to offer your alternatives or ask questions and when to just let others do what they need to do. The second blind spot to just keep an eye out for is that sometimes because you are so good at coming up with options and good options at that, you may actually find it hard to choose which option you want to move forward with. Part of the strength is being able to choose the best path, but there are some scenarios where there isn't necessarily a best path, right? Like think about food you want to eat, right? What restaurant do you want to go to? You probably can think through all the scenarios of like, okay, well, if we eat here, then we're going to get this, and then it's going to happen this way, and we got to travel here, we got to drive here, blah, blah, blah. You do all of that, but then you're like, okay, these options are good, but I don't know which one is the best, most efficient, thing to do. And are we looking for efficiency when we're looking for a restaurant? So just know that your strategic is still beneficial in those scenarios, but it might be really helpful to surround yourself with people who are good at making decisions and good at choosing things, so they can help you and help you kind of lean into that. And B, maybe lean into some of your other strengths in those areas where it's like, okay, I can really think through this in a strategic sense, but do I need to? Do I really need to like dive into this that deep? Because it's frustrating to others when I can't make a choice and I need to be able to make a choice. So that would be one of those things I would want to talk to you about with strategic, with your other strengths and how that might show up for you. But because I don't know what your other strengths are, whoever is watching this, I can't say exactly how that would show up for you. And it's just something to note that you may find yourself having a hard time making decisions sometimes. And there are ways to work with that. So that is a little bit about strategic in your everyday life and the blind spots you can look out for and the benefits you can look out for. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit about tips and tricks for communication, relationships, and goal setting as it pertains to strategic. So I'll see you over there.